Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. Your hosts, Austin Render, Dalton Shetler, with you here on Tuesday, March 3rd. It is tournament time. Dalton, we've got a bracket. It's in my backpack. I should hold it, like we have an actual physical
You can really
bracket.
feel it. You can fill one
Let's
out
go.
if you want. It's that time of the year. Let's go.
I have a bracket in my hands. That's what we're talking about.
Mark.
It is Big Ten Tournament Week. Austin Render, Dalton Scheller with you, your host of the Dribble Drive, episode 92 today. We are streaming live on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. We've already got double-digit people watching us live here, waiting on us to start. I think it's a lot of Hoosier fans who want to hear some thoughts on the all Big Ten teams. We will get to that.
Pitchforks.
I promise the pitchforks will be out, and I am not holding back, but we're going to get to that. If you're not subscribed already to the Back Home Network YouTube channel, that's where you can go to find all of our content in video form. We're also on Apple and Spotify podcasts. And throw us a follow on Instagram and X. We're at Dribble Drive WBB there as well. Big week ahead, Dalton. But first, let's start by looking back at a couple of games that kind of wrapped up the regular season for us. And I don't think there was, we've said this a couple times this year, game of the year, Michigan State, Michigan, Oregon. It's interesting because Michigan is involved in a lot of these, Michigan, UConn. Now it's Michigan, Ohio State. This game was wild. It was a very good game. And eventually it looked like Michigan had it sewn up after Ohio State needed to miss a free throw and get the rebound. They didn't. Michigan gets the rebound. They get fouled, but they're not in the bonus yet. And so now they got to inbound the ball. And sure enough, they turn it over. Jelani Cambridge gets fouled shooting a three, hits all three free throws. We go to overtime. And
hold on, before you even get to overtime, it was another inbound of a baseball pass that didn't touch anybody, and then gave Ohio State a final look at it at the end of regulation where they were able to set it up. So to your point,
true.
I mean, and you still haven't even gotten to the overtime. This was a wild game.
And then Macy Brown played hero in overtime for Michigan, a banked-in three, and then a big three that tied the game, and I believe Olsen hit what proved to be the winner. And Michigan wins this one on the road. It was dodgy. It was probably one that Michigan fans feel like should have been less complicated than it was. I will say this, and this might trigger Ohio State fans. I've rewatched that last play where Jelani gets the tip and gets fouled. Clock did not start on time. I'm just going to say that. I'm not sure Jelani really actually got fouled within the whatever it was, 2.1. Clock did not start when the ball got tipped. So maybe a little home cooking going on there in Value City Arena. And there was a buzzer beater at the end of overtime that didn't end up beating the buzzer, but was very close. It was a wild game. Michigan played two big games this week. They got that win, and they got this win over Maryland at home, 87-69. So all in all, Dalton, I think a pretty good week. I know that you have to say nice things about Michigan here, but I would say Michigan was a little bit shook up after that loss at Iowa, and this was a nice way for them to finish the season by finishing with a couple of big wins to make sure everybody knows, okay, this is still an Elite Eight, Final Four caliber team with a road win against one of their rivals, and then a dominant win where they just were never really in any peril against a red-hot Maryland team.
And I'll be honest with you, because honestly, had they even split this week, I really wouldn't have lost confidence. And maybe I need to be more recency biased than I am. Like I've noticed that in a lot of conversations this last week about like, oh, does a win or a loss knock a team out of this seed line or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
It's a 30-game season. I don't know if I necessarily ebb and flow as dramatically as some others, but I think overall it was a good bounce back week. I think the Iowa game showed a magnifying glass on maybe some new flaws that we weren't aware of with Michigan. The denial of Olivia Olsen and how everything, the whole ship just got stuck in mud there in Iowa City when the ball wasn't in Olivia Olson's hands or touching her every time down the floor. I thought that was interesting, but I think they're going to be able to overcome that. I don't think there's going to be too many teams that present those problems, and when they do, I think they'll be okay. I think they learned a lesson in a close game in that win over Ohio State where they got away with a couple of late game miscues, and it's better to learn those lessons in wins than losses. I think overall Michigan is still just fine. I think they're a team that you and I have talked about, Austin. I think there's maybe two teams we feel like have real ceiling of Final Four aspirations. UCLA has that and then some. And I think Michigan has proven that their ceiling is a Final Four this year. I think they're still on track to. You would be disappointed if they're not in a second weekend. And I don't know if you'd be floored if they end up making a Final Four.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, and just full transparency here at the top, we're going to spend most of this episode on postseason awards, on Big Ten tournament previews. So we're just going to kind of rapid fire through some of these things from the last week. Ohio State bounced back, got a nice win over Michigan State. School record, correct? 18 3-pointers for Ohio State. And sometimes you just tip your cap and you say, you know what, you guys got it today.
Well, I was going to say, and Ohio State's proven to be a team that when they get to the paint, they're dangerous. And here in this one, they prove that we can hit threes as well. 18 threes made in this one. Ohio State with a huge bounce back. And by the way, I'll say this too, concisely. The reveal of the NCAA committee had come out about 30 minutes before this game started, and Ohio State was the 16 of the top 16. They were the last spot to host heading into the game. You imagine that win goes a long ways to help boost them. I was surprised to see them at 16th. They were 16. I know we'll cover some of this. Minnesota's 15, Michigan State 14, Maryland 13. But it'll be interesting. I don't know if we get all 7 Big Ten schools, but Ohio State certainly made another feather in its cap in its argument to host.
I think Ohio State put itself in a position where they should be good to go as long as they take care of business, which is either going to be against Indiana or Nebraska in their opening game of the Big Ten tournament. If they win that game, they should have no issues being a host school, probably on the 4 line. Now, if they go on a little bit of a run, they could elevate to the 3 maybe. But essentially in that committee's rankings, which you mentioned, it looks like all the 4 seeds are Big Ten schools, correct? It was Maryland, Ohio State, Michigan State, Minnesota in some order there. Minnesota got a nice win over Illinois. This was a really good, like they had a week off. They had just lost at home to Michigan State, and we're thinking, okay, does Minnesota, like, it was a great run they were on, but maybe there are some things that other teams can do. And this is a great road win. And I got to be honest, Illinois, a tough finish to the year for a team that I think is pretty good. They had to go to Iowa and nearly beat them. Had to face Minnesota off a week off and almost got them. Like, this Illinois team's going to get somebody, I think, in the postseason. But give Minnesota credit. This was not one that you thought they would go out and I don't know if I thought they would win it, but it felt really important for them, especially with that reveal that you mentioned on Sunday, that they're in that top 16. You lose this game, you probably immediately drop out. So Minnesota's in a good spot, and it clinched the double bye for them in the Big Ten tournament.
And how cool is this, too? Because I know we're going to talk a lot about the Big Ten tournament. We're going to talk a lot about postseason stuff. When you're talking about those 4 teams that were on the 4 line, Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan State, we've talked about. We haven't talked a ton about Maryland. But all 4 of those teams have reasons to win in the Big Ten tournament. I think sometimes there's maybe a mentality of the Big Ten tournament. What does it really matter? It pales in comparison to the regular season title, at least in my opinion. And I think a lot of people kind of feel that way. Regular season outweighs the tournament. And of course, the NCAA tournament matters. I don't know that we put so much stock, but look how many real high-level teams, Austin, have something to play for when we get down to Indianapolis this week. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And there's more. I feel like last season it was, okay, UCLA trying to avenge the USC situation. Yes. And then it was Maryland and Ohio State trying to make sure they were hosts. And then there was some bubble conversation with Oregon. And then obviously that Washington, Minnesota game. This season feels jam-packed with implications for pretty much teams 2 through 13. At 2 through 15 in the standings, really. Everybody's playing for something outside, I think, UCLA, who I think is pretty firmly in that number one seed. out west. So Minnesota gets the double bye. Here's a question, Dalton. Is it who would you favor, Ohio State or Minnesota? With Minnesota getting that double bye, but Ohio State potentially getting a game under their belt. Let's say they beat Indiana or Nebraska, whoever it is. Now they've got a little bit of traction on the tires. Minnesota's had almost a week off. Do you favor Ohio State because they didn't get the double bye, but they get an opportunity to get warm? Or are you worried because Indiana and Nebraska will be desperate teams that are playing decent basketball right now, and Ohio State's got to weather that storm before even getting to Minnesota?
Well, I think it's a good question too, because especially the last 2 years at Michigan State, we've kind of had the shot in the foot in both ends. I mean, in the first year, had the double bye, was clearly it felt rusty against a Nebraska team. Last year, you got beat by an Iowa team who had some momentum churning a little bit. So I do think there might be some to that aspect. I think maybe the biggest thing too, if you're talking about Ohio State and Minnesota head to head, remember they just played a couple of weeks ago and Minnesota won that game. And I think we're talking about a lot of like teams, a lot of comparable teams. And the nerd in me says that probabilities eventually weigh even when you're talking about teams that feel kind of even. So that part would make me lean to Ohio State maybe more than anything. But I feel like I haven't given enough credit to Minnesota just in talking about this because I was so focused on the implications of what Big Ten teams have to play for in Indy. Honestly, Austin, tip of the cap to Minnesota to be able to clinch a double bye on this. I know you and I feel like there's a top three that were really deserving of winning Coach of the Year, and Don Plitzwhite certainly is one of those coaches who has really impressed us. A really well-rounded outfit, and I think that's one of the big things is their floor is so high. Their ceiling isn't a ton higher. Like I think we feel comfortable about what they are, but I think that's the beauty of Minnesota. They have been that consistent, that constant all season long. I don't think their ceiling is necessarily a Final Four, but their floor, you're going to have to show up and beat them and take a win against them. And I just wanted to make that case for Minnesota that this is a tough team to play, and they deserve a lot of credit for this year.
If they fall to a 5 in the NCAA tournament, I don't want to be that 4.
Right.
That's going to be a difficult out for sure. Couple of quick ones. This game was wild. Iowa beat Illinois 82-78. Illinois hit 9 straight threes in the fourth quarter there, or in the second half. Mike Hall on Big Ten Network was going to lose his mind, I think, if they made a 10th one there. He was gearing up for it on that final call, which I loved. They were bringing it down the floor, and then unfortunately Destiny Jackson commits the offensive foul. But you could tell Mike Hall was ready for one more three-pointer that didn't end up getting up. But 9 straight for Illinois. Again, this Illinois team's going to give somebody fits. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's crazy, Dalton, in this Big Ten tournament. You've got Nebraska, Illinois, and Oregon all playing on the opening day. Those are all NCAA tournament teams. Those are all teams that I think can win games in the NCAA tournament. Those are all teams that I think can make it to Friday or Saturday of this Big Ten tournament, and they've got to play on Wednesday. Just shows you how deep this league is. Last couple of spots got confirmed over the weekend. Indiana with a, hey, we're here and we're not going to miss this tournament performance. It was a win and in situation for both teams, and this game was 21-5, like 6 minutes in. It was just over. And the Hoosiers, I was impressed because you think about that Northwestern game about 4 weeks ago. Indiana jumped out to that 30-3 lead, and then it got tight. It was down to 10 in the fourth quarter, and Indiana just kind of hung on. This one, they cruised. They never let their foot off the gas. Indiana rolls into the tournament. They've won 3 straight, 6 of their last 8. They will be the 13th seed. And then Purdue gets in, unfortunately ending the career. Well, we knew the career was going to end after this game because Northwestern had been eliminated. But Joe McEwen's career comes to an end. Purdue gets the win. It was either them or Penn State. Purdue gets in. They get the 14 seed because of their head-to-head tiebreaker with Wisconsin, who goes to the 15. And Northwestern out, Penn State out as a result of this. So that puts us in this position right here, Dalton, as I pull up the bracket. This is the bracket that we're looking at here for the women's basketball Big Ten tournament. Let me take that banner off the bottom so we can see all the teams. It is funny,
Go ahead,
Dalton.
leave it up. Leave it up.
One of my first observations was the two noon games in this bracket are both going to feature two West Coast teams. That was one of the things that jumped out to me that I thought was funny. USC and Washington are going to play at noon on Thursday. Then the winner of that game is going to play UCLA at noon on Friday. I would have been interested if that were, let's say, Illinois getting somebody like, remember Indiana last season was the 9 and they got Oregon as the 8 and they took them down in that noon game, kind of beat them pretty handedly. And then on Friday, they got USC at noon and went toe to toe. This time it'll just be two jet lag teams playing each other with no body clock advantages there. But nonetheless, it's a beautiful bracket. We're excited about it. What stands out to you when you first saw this bracket Sunday night? What if anything jumped out to you?
Well, I think the very obvious one that I think a lot of people would look through with this prism, and certainly I do following a team, you want to be on the other side of UCLA, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to make a run in this Big Ten tournament because of how dominant UCLA's been all season, you want to be on the other side. So I think things get really interesting with that other side. But I thought opening day was really fascinating for a lot of the reasons, like we talked about, so many teams have something to play for. Indiana, Nebraska is fascinating to me because Nebraska is fighting for its life. Extremely bubble team right now are the Nebraska Huskers. They got a big win late against Washington in the season that helped maybe stabilize, maybe put them back on the good side of the bubble for the time being. But Indiana's also, as you know, but playing some of its best basketball here lately, and they've started to really find some momentum. I think that'll be an awesome way to kick off the tournament. Wisconsin, Illinois is interesting to me too. It'd be really interesting if it was played at the Kohl Center because for whatever reason, Wisconsin just turns into a bunch of All-Americans when they're playing in Madison. But Wisconsin, Illinois, I think is going to be really interesting because I'm with you. I think Illinois is a team that you don't really want to face. I think they've given a lot of problems to a lot of teams recently. Iowa, as we talked about. I think that'll be interesting. But those are my biggest observations right away, besides maybe what we already alluded to, an Ohio State Minnesota potential rematch on Friday, if it happens, would be fascinating also.
Could be a battle for a hosting spot, which could be, there's a lot on the line there. I'm steering us poorly here on the ship. We'll come back to the bracket in a moment. Let's do, we'll finish on our predictions, our keys. I think those Wednesday games are fascinating because I think last season it felt like, okay, Washington, Minnesota was a big game, but Wisconsin and Rutgers kind of got in, but it didn't feel like they were really going to like make a run. It feels
like
I know
13
Wisconsin
plus 2 in that tournament last year. 13 plus 2.
Yes,
Like,
Wisconsin is struggling. I believe they've lost 9 straight games coming in, but I still think that's a team with talent, with a system, with toughness that is not going to be an easy out. And then Purdue. Purdue is a team that has beaten Washington this season. They just played Oregon. That could be to their advantage. So I'm curious about those Wednesday games. We'll talk about them in a minute. But let's talk Big Ten. This is your first team all Big Ten. Actually, let's do awards first, the personal ones. Big Ten Player of the Year, Lauren Betts. I did not vote Lauren Betts. I believe you did.
I did.
So let's take both sides of it. And I want to preface by saying I am not anti-Lauren Betts. I think Lauren Betts is a really good basketball player. I am more so just trying to open people's eyes to somebody who averaged 26 points a game in conference play. But I'll let you take the Lauren Betts side. Obviously, this is awesome. She's an incredible player. The way her career has kind of battled through some mental health stuff early in it, to persevere through that, to be the face of kind of the Big Ten right now. Lauren Betts is awesome. Give us the Betts side of what I thought might have been closer in my head than maybe what other people were thinking for Player of the Year.
No, I can tell you I wrestled with it. Matter of fact, I went with Jelani really until a couple of days before. And I will say I put my ballot in before her and the Buckeyes came and lit up the Breslin Center up in East Lansing. Maybe it'd feel different after that one, but I knew I wouldn't be able to get it in after that game with some of the other things that I had scheduled that day. But I was back and forth on this one. And I think as you'll make the case for Jelani, and I want to preface it, I don't feel necessarily anti Jelani either. To your point about not feeling anti Lauren, if this would have been co-Big Ten Players of the Year, that would have felt maybe the most appropriate because I think they have two very different cases, but both very valid. I think for Lauren Betts, even though the numbers aren't maybe as high as they were just a season ago, I think the biggest case around Lauren Betts is the simple feel of the game. When UCLA is on the floor and Lauren Betts is out there with them, you can feel the difference right away. Like, do you remember those AAU tournaments where like you'd go play basketball and you'd end up with like Indiana Elite like in your next game and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like cool, like this we don't really have a chance. Like Lauren gives you that kind of feel because defensively teams are scared to go inside
Yeah.
because she changes the game. She's able to alter that much just simply by her presence. And I think maybe it's hard to judge presence and impact versus ability, skill. She's got both, but I think that presence is a huge factor. Same thing on the offensive side, where she gets double teamed and she's become a better passer than she was even a season ago. She makes the right reads out of those traps. She always sets the teammates up. She's certainly the best player on the best team, a team that ran through the best this league has ever been in the Big Ten. They went 18-0. 13 of those wins were by 20 or more points. 16 of the 18 wins were by double digits. Only two came in single digits. And I mean, those could have even maybe been double digits. They absolutely ripped through this league. Lauren Betts was the system for it. That's why I awarded that.
And I think that the argument for Lauren Betts is outside of the stats. I think
Agreed.
if you're a data person, it's hard to not vote Jelani Cambridge. I'm very much a stats person, but I do think eye test wise, you just watch UCLA and you're like, oh yeah, there's her like that girl is unstoppable. Like
Yep.
you cannot stop her. And the way she impacts the game, and that's a segue to her being defensive player of the year in the conference, the way she impacts just what teams are even just trying to do
Yep.
is impressive. And so the reason I would have done Jelani is simply because you don't have to look that far. For me, it's conference only stats for Jelani: 26.4 a game, 5.6 rebounds, 4.9 assists. She shot over 50% from the floor and nearly 46% from three, which was a weakness for her
Mhm.
as a freshman. She did not shoot the three ball well. Teams sagged off of her. And now all of a sudden, there's a big one of the big reasons for her big jump this year is that she can shoot the three because it makes defenses come out more, which then allows that quick speed and that quick first step of hers to get past people. So I think she's become a very all-around player for Ohio State. I did have Tyler Danberg send me, the voice of the Buckeyes, sent me a
Yeah.
stat today. He said only Michaela Blake scored more in conference play in the country than Jelani Cambridge.
Wow.
26.4 for Jelani Cambridge. So look, I it's hard because when you have these arguments, it looks like I'm anti Lauren Betts, and I'm just not. I watched them play from courtside at Pauley, and it's just you're in awe of what she can do. But there's a little bit of the flashiness too of Jelani. It's kind of
Sure.
like a sports car against a very dependable SUV. You know, like it's two different playing styles. It's two completely different players. So I don't think you could go wrong. I'm not like looking at people who say Lauren Betts is. I'm not looking at that and saying, wow, what a terrible vote. We'll talk about some terrible votes later. This is not one of them. I think you could have gone either way. Freshman of the year, Jazzy Davidson. I don't think anybody had any disagreements here. We should shout out the rest of the freshmen, though. First, let's give Jazzy Davidson her flowers. She led the team, I believe, in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. Like just did it all for USC. They kind of built the plane out of Jazzy Davidson. And so she had to handle a lot as a freshman, and she's a first-team All-Big Tenner now, all Big Ten Freshman of the Year. And they go kind of as Jazzy Davidson goes.
Yep.
A little bit. She needs some help. That's when they're at their best. But a lot of what they do game plan wise is involving Jazzy Davidson.
No, to me, maybe you talk about like Parchment maybe being in that
Yeah.
conversation, but overall, I think Jazzy ran away with this one, and it was the expectation before the season, and that's also one of the interesting things about like the Lauren Jelani conversation. And I'm with you. I hate for this to sound like it's skewed or distorted anything besides these are two wonderful players,
Mm-hmm.
but Lauren was the preseason player of the year, and there was that expectation. And Jelani would have had to apparently score 40 points a game for us to change our mind. Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm joking, but you know what I'm saying. Like Lauren also played to the standard. They went undefeated, but
Mm-hmm.
that is a factor in some of these things. And nobody really went up and took it from Jazzy for freshman of the year. But she also came in as the expected freshman of the year.
I wonder what would have happened if we voted Jelani as player of the year preseason. Is she your player of the year now? I would have to think yes.
Right?
Like, you certainly didn't do anything to lose it. Here's the all freshman team, by the way. You mentioned Sierra Parchment, probably the runner up if
Yeah.
we had to look at people's votes. I thought that Bryn McGoy was a no-brainer. You can see most of these were coaches and media. Addie Deal was on the coaches list, and Kylie Kitts was on the media list. Kylie Kitts, I think, had a really good season going before she got hurt.
Yep.
And since she has returned, just hasn't been that big of a part for Ohio State, which is why she did not make my list. Full transparency. I had a second Hoosier on there, and Nevaeh Caffey, because I think it's hard. Nevaeh doesn't necessarily pop out to you on a score sheet, but what she does as a point guard and the top defensive option in the Big Ten for a Big Ten team, like that to me is worthy of being on this team. And she's playing really good basketball right now. She's been a big part of why Indiana has turned their season around. Destiny Jackson was a no-brainer for me. Addie Mack, a no-brainer. I honestly, Dalton, hand up, forgot about Sienna Betts. That was one that if I were to redo my ballot, she would be on there for me. I did not put her on there. I kind of forgot about her, to be honest with you. She had a very good Big Ten season after coming in, I think, in December, early December from that injury. And then Maya Makalewski as well on both of those lists. She's played very well here for Indiana, especially in the second half of the season. Anything you take away from the all-freshman teams?
No, I think we nailed it. I think the no doubters were, as we said, Jazzy Davidson. Bryn McGoy to me was a
Yep,
no
Brim McGuire.
doubter. Addie Mack was a no doubter. Sierra Parchment was a no doubter. I thought Destiny Jackson was a no doubter.
Yep.
I think that like is kind of the top line. But I thought everybody on this list was really deserving. I mean, as we've kind of sprinkled through.
Yeah, the one I would look at, I would say, I don't know. Pulling up her stuff now. So Addie Deal in Big Ten play averaged 5 points, 1 rebound, 1.5 assists. That would be the one where I'm like, and this is going to be a theme of my thoughts today, is what are the coaches looking at there? That would be my question on Addie Deal. And this is not a show where we're going to tear people down. We're going to lift people up for award winning. But I
No, and
just
I
wonder if
think
that spot could have gone to somebody like a Nevaeh Caffey or even a Hawkeye teammate. Journey Houston had a really nice season. So I'm just wondering if there was maybe another option out there.
well, and to your point, I think there's a distinction between I think Addie Deal is the real deal, pun intended, but I think it took a while for her to get the rotation minutes and kind of iron that spot out, right? Like if we're looking at full body of work, once McCabe went down, things had changed a little bit. Natty was getting a little bit more time. She was already kind of starting to chomp at the bit, but it was a little bit more late coming. I would say so. I think that's maybe a distinction you can make. I think she's talented enough, absolutely, to be on this list, but that's what I have in mind.
Yeah, I think it's talent over production a little bit for Addie
Yeah.
Deal. I think we all know how good she can be. But to me, again, just using Caffey as an example as somebody I voted for, she in Big Ten play averaged 9 points a game, 9.2, with almost 3 assists and 4 rebounds a game, as opposed to 5.5, 1 and 1. So to me, like, I get it in the fact that we all know Addie Deal is going to be a great player. She's going to be a problem in this league. but I don't know if we're ready to just be like, yeah, that means she's an all freshman. I think that there were others who produced who maybe were a little bit more worthy of that. All defensive team. The defensive player of the year, as we mentioned, was Lauren Betts. She was the only unanimous all defensive player, which I found shocking.
Same.
Like, who is not voting for Kennedy Cambridge? Who is not voting for Brooke Corals Daniels? Who, like, you know what name's not on here, Dalton? Sophia Bell. Like, how are you not voting for Sophia Bell? She was terrific against Shay Ciezki. Like, second team all Big Ten or Shay Ciezki, but I guess not impressive enough for the coaches. But I don't know. Like, I was a little shocked by this list. I thought this was the most open award out there, was the all defensive team. They give the defensive player of the year to Lauren Betts, and then there was just kind of a sprinkling. You can see a lot of these. There were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that were chosen by both the coaches and the media. We had to choose 8. You see some players in here getting some love. Elsa Lemula, a great shot blocker for Ohio State, only got on the media side. Rashonda Jones from Michigan State, big part of their defense, only on the media. 2 Minnesota
Golden. In the Big Ten. Sorry, since I could just jump in and help support her case. She was second in the Big Ten for steals per game before being hurt. So, I mean, she was just behind Kennedy. So, I mean, that's a strong resume she pieced.
And Minnesota, with one of the best defenses in the league, had 2 on there according to the coaches. I did put Tori McKinney on mine, did not put Amaya Battle, but certainly worthy. Aluchi Okanawa was the defensive player of the year in the ACC last season. Kylie Feuerbach, no surprise there. Jazzy Davidson, Kennedy Smith, Kennedy Cambridge. Anything you want to point out on this all defensive list?
Well, I think you nailed it. I think Sophia Bell was the big omission for me as well with how she's played. But I think, like, I look at this list, right? Feuerbach was somebody who's really impressive, and she certainly showed it against Michigan with Olivia Olson, the way she defended and denied her the ball. Okanawa was super impressive. A lot of these people I did have on. I mean, Kennedy was an obvious choice. I think one of the observations I'll make, and look, I don't want to just pride myself and boast about my objectivity, but even from the Michigan State camp, I thought Brooke Corals Daniels was the best defensive player in the league this year. I know we've talked a little bit about it. I thought she simply changed games. I think she was very physical and immediately would make people uncomfortable.
Yep.
And I think she set a tone for Michigan as a whole defensively that elevated them on that end of the floor. I thought she should have maybe been the Big Ten all defensive player of the year, actually. Not even all defensive team, but player of the year.
I voted her for player of the year as well. I was a little skewed in the fact that I kind of used, okay, what games did Shay Ciezki struggle in? And she struggled more than any against Michigan and Brooke Corals Daniels and what she was able to do. Sophia Bell from Oregon, Kylie Feuerbach from Iowa, Kennedy Cambridge, like those are the types of names that I thought of. And Lauren Betts is a deserving defensive player of the year. I'm not taking that. I thought this was just the most open award of the awards. All right. We've got a ton of people watching live. I think they're here for this. First team, all Big Ten. Here we go. On the coaches' side, Barry Wallace, Ava Hayden. These are in team alphabetical order, no particular order. Barry Wallace, Ava Hayden, Aluchi Okanawa, Olivia Olson, Silas Swords, which is spelled wrong. My apologies to Sila. Our graphics department will be reprimanded for that. Jelani Cambridge, Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, Jazzy Davidson, and Savia Sellers. And 8 of those 10 were unanimous, which again, I can't believe how non-unanimous we were in some of the other categories, but we're just handing unanimity out. I don't think that's not a word, but I'm going to make it one. On the media side, a couple of names that were not on the coaches' side: Shay Ciezki, Britt Prince, both on this side, as well as the other names: Ava Hayden, Aluchi, Olivia Olson, Silas Swords, Jelani Cambridge, Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, Jazzy Davidson. So the differences were the media included Shay Ciezki and Britt Prince, and the coaches included Barry Wallace and Savia Sellers. And I want to precursor that I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like I want to put in front before I go on this rant. I love Barry Wallace and Savia Sellers. And so they are fantastic players in this league. And Barry Wallace is going to have a terrific career. And I am not saying that they are bad basketball players. But I am just appalled that the second leading scorer in the Big Ten and a 50, 40, 90 player is not on the first team All Big Ten. And that unanimously, these coaches voted for all these other people. Unanimously. That's 18 for 18. And they didn't include Shay. I have this hard. So here's the stat that we found from Her Hoop Stats and the existence of that database, which goes back a while. Shay Ciezki is having the best 50, 40, 90 season anyone has ever had. And 50, 40, 90s don't just grow on trees. There's 3 of them this year, and they're all in the Big Ten. Shay Ciezki, Gianna Neepkins, and Britt Prince. But this is the most points anyone has ever averaged while going 50, 40, 90. And it's not like she's squeaking by. Shay Ciezki leads the conference in three-point shooting at 46%. And she shoots over 6 a game. The ball is in her hands at all times. I have no idea how the coaches who game plan and watch film of Indiana watched Shay Ciezki and said, nah, not a top 10 player in this league. Dalton, if she sits out the UCLA game, she's the leading scorer in the Big Ten. She tried to gut through an ankle injury, re-injured it, only played 7 minutes, scored 2 points. That took her points per game average down a full point. If she doesn't play in that game, she's averaging over 24 points a game this season and is the leading scorer in the Big Ten. And all these coaches looked at her and said, no, we're good. I don't get it. I know I'm biased. I know that. But this shouldn't have been that hard. And I understand there's when Indiana was sitting there at 0-10, you and I were having conversations like, I'm curious what they're going to do with Shay Ciezki if Indiana finishes 2-16 in the league. But Indiana won 6 of its last 8 games, primarily because of her play. Before she got hurt, she was averaging 31 a game over her previous 3 games that led to Indiana getting its first 3 wins of the Big Ten season. And then coming down the stretch, she was right back at it, playing well here down in the final 3 games again. So I don't know. I'm speechless. I don't get it. I am starting to wonder if coaches should not get votes for all Big Ten players. If this is how we're going to handle this situation. I don't know. This was a frustrating one. Shout out to Shimmy Miller on Big Ten Network for calling it out right away. First thing, Dave Rebson said, what are your thoughts on the first team All Big Ten? First thing she said is Shay Ciezki is a first team All Big Tenner. Thank you, Shimmy. That is absolutely correct. I am frustrated. I apologize for raising my voice, but I am just, this one, I was dumbfounded by everyone who didn't vote Shay Ciezki first team. I need to know right now. And if you want to come on the pod in the summer and tell me why you didn't vote for Shay, let's do it. Let's set up an appointment. Here's my half-baked take on the coaches voting in these things. This is the busiest time of the year for these coaches. They are dialed in on trying to put game plans together for the most important games of the season and the Big Ten tournament. So I don't know how much time these coaches actually have to spend. You and I talked about it, how much it takes to put 25 players in order from 1 to 25. This was not a simple sit down, fill it out, 10 minutes, we're done. I thought about this, my vote all week. I take my vote very seriously. You were texting me I'm stressed out. I don't know what to do. There's
like
so
the ACT when you sit down.
Yeah, there's so much to do. You have to do 25 ranked players in order. You got to get 8 defensive players, 8 freshmen. And to me, I am not coaching a team toward the Big Ten and NCAA tournament. these coaches are, and I just wonder how much time they have, but they're also the smartest people in the room. So I just am like, how did this disconnect happen? Like, I'm super biased. I get it. But she's a top 10 player in this league. I voted her, I think, fifth, maybe sixth. Like, she is, I think it was Jelani, Lauren, Olivia Olson. I think I might have put Alucci. Who'd you say?
Ava Hayden.
Ava Hayden, yep. And then I think Shay. So it's 5 or 6 there. She was right around Alucci for me. And I don't know. That's just to see, not only to see all those players ahead of him, to see that 8 of them were unanimously ahead, that was shocking to me.
Well, and it's funny because she was a top 10 player for me. So I'm glad we get to continue to do the podcast because I was nervous for a minute.
Dalton would have been kicked off, although I would have loved to hear a counterpoint.
I know.
I've had multiple people text me today going, dude, what the heck? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't have a strong rebuttal. The only thing that I can offer if I'm playing devil's advocate, and again, I voted for her. Don't bring the pitchforks to me. I voted for her. I think she got wrongly or falsely categorized in the same department with winning. And
yeah,
I think a lot of people, as they're trying to filter and break through this, they make winning a huge qualifier, maybe too much so. Look, this is an overwhelming process. I won't flaw too many people's logic in it. But I think in high volume scores on teams that did not fare extremely well in the Big Ten Conference, for me, in my mind, I immediately think Shay Ciezki. I immediately think Grace Sullivan. I immediately think Kiyomi McMiller. I think there's a couple of differences that extend Shay and separate her from the rest of those other two, though. I think one, with Kiyomi McMiller, you have the nation's leading field goal percentage shooter in the post that you could play with in Gracie Merkel.
yeah.
So she has a running mate who can really highlight and emphasize her skill set. I think with Northwestern, Caroline Lau is one of the most unsung players that this league has seen in the last couple of years. She's one of the leading assist getters in the Big Ten Conference. She sets up Grace Sullivan in nice spots. Shay Ciezki found a pretty nice running mate in Lene Beaumont, but they do play similar positions and they own similar skill sets. They're not playing off of each other the same way that some of these other matchups happen. And Shay's doing it even more efficiently than what the other ones are. So I think that if we are doing categories, and I think that's fair when you're trying to break down 18 teams times 15 person rosters, you're looking at least a couple hundred to 300 some players that you have to try and think about in totality. I think categorizing is fair, but I do think Shay has separated herself from the rest of that category that she would be considered with or compared with based on that and that exact framework.
Well, and I would also say she separated herself by scoring 29 against Penn State and I think 30 some against Northwestern. And Indiana separated themselves from both of those teams by winning 6 of their last. It's not like Indiana was, look, for a while there, it looked like Indiana was going to be in a bad spot and maybe was going to be one of those teams where it's like, all right, they missed the tournament, throw Shay a second team, all Big Ten not. But they made this great surge in February, primarily because of what she was able to do. And now the rest of the team has gotten better. But the thing, and I honestly, here's the second teams. I'll throw them up on the screen. Actually, that's third team. Here's second teams. Notice in the coaches that Grace Sullivan is not in the second team, which I was shocked by. And she had a great game against Indiana. So maybe I'm biased in what I saw from her, but I thought she was a really good player and deserved to be in that second team. I was a little surprised by that, and Kiyomi McMiller for that matter. Like both of them had great seasons. You pull up the third team here if you're watching us. They both land on the third team for the coaches. But like to me, like if you're comparing Grace Sullivan and Kiyomi McMiller with Chit Chat Wright and Amaya Battle and Yarden Garzone, like those are completely different, in my opinion. Like those two were volume scorers, Sullivan and McMiller, and carried their teams, like had to carry their teams. And what McMiller did was historic down the stretch. So it's not just Shay being not first team. I thought the coaches put a real emphasis, Dalton, in winning. And I get that to a certain extent. you and I talked about this on your radio show that we recorded earlier today, that I think the 25 person all Big Ten is a good move. It's good
Yes.
to get more people honored. And I think what that allows you to do is say, let's get the 10 best, the absolute 10 best players in that first team. And then the second team can become either the Grace Sullivans, the Keomi McMillers, who like had awesome seasons but didn't translate to wins. And then the second team can be those players on the winning teams that maybe didn't have the best stats, but should be rewarded for the impact they made in helping their teams win. I think when you had such a few amount, you wanted to reward the winners. But now that you have this bigger runway, I think everyone should be rewarded regardless of your winning status. Now, the top couple should be the best players on the best team. I'm not saying Shay should have won Player of the Year, but I do think that she is no doubt a top 10 player in this league. And I think no doubt Grace Sullivan and Keomi McMiller are top 20 players in this league. And I just think that the coaches went to winning a lot more than they did statistics. And someone told me once, look, somebody has to lead every team in scoring. I get that. But there was enough there for Ciezki to be elevated up, and I think Sullivan and McMiller to be elevated up as well.
Well, and I would say this too before we branch off to whatever's next. There's a little bit of an effect of this with a team wise in Minnesota, where
Yeah.
Minnesota started the Big Ten season 3 and 4, and we just kind of made up our mind what Minnesota was, and then it took 9 straight wins for us to kind of take them serious again. Like it didn't feel like until the very end of that winning streak where we like, oh, hey, there's Minnesota. Like
Yeah.
after 6 straight wins, we never really batted an eye as a collective group. And I think we now are starting to catch up. Like, I mean, where we got them in the hosting conversation. So I think everybody's now on tune. But much the same way, like with Shay Ciezki in Indiana, the mind felt made up. It didn't
Yeah.
matter that Indiana won 6 of the last 8. I mean, of course it matters, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I think there were too many narratives and minds already decided on a certain brand or image. And we've seen it with Minnesota. Minnesota's been able to flip that. For whatever reason, Shay and Indiana weren't able to garner enough attention to flip whatever that mind was.
Another difference, I think, for Shay, certainly over Keomi McMiller, is the consistency from day one
Yeah,
to the
for sure.
final day. The only game Shay didn't score in double figures, she left the game after 7 minutes with an ankle injury. Every other game, she came and produced. And so I would love to hear the other side. Um, I don't think I'm gonna like it, but I'm willing to hear it out. I just can't. That's a hard one for me to figure out. I was disappointed Nevaeh didn't get an all freshman selection, but this one was much more of like, really, that's interesting. So all I know is I don't know which coaches voted which way, but I'm not sure I'd want to be in Shay's way coming up this week. That's what I'll say. Whether Amy Williams picked her to be a first teamer or not, I think Shay's going to tell herself that she didn't, and Shay's going to be ready to go. Let's flash that second team back up here one more time. That's third team again. Dang it. Second team, let's give some shout outs. Hannah Stolke's on there. Kennedy Blair, just a terrific story and what she has done with her career at Michigan State. Grace Van Sluten, Grace Groholski on both lists. Tori McKinney is on the coaches, not the media. Britt Prince, I do think Britt Prince had an argument for first team as well. The media gave it to her. The coaches did not. I think I had her 11th on my list, which would be second team. But Britt Prince did average over 17 points and shoot 54, 46, 90. 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Like, it was a really good year for Britt Prince. And I think the losing streak of Nebraska made us kind of push her off to the side a bit. But a really good year for Britt Prince. I think she had an outside argument, certainly, to be in that conversation. Katie Fiso, great year for her. Coaches give her second team nod. Media had her third team. Gabriella Jaquez on both lists, and Kara Dunn is on the coaches list. Media gave Gianna Neepkins and Keomi McMiller and Grace Sullivan spots. Neepkins is one I was surprised fell as low as she did as well, Dalton, because she's another 50, 40, 90 shooter. Just the way she impacts the game for UCLA. She was not even third team by the coaches. She was honorable mention along with the likes of Avery Howell, Mara Braun, who I was doing some prep for the Big Ten tournament. Great to see her play in 29 games this season for Minnesota. Just awesome. Really happy for her. And you're seeing Minnesota reap the benefits from it. Mila Holloway, honorable mention. Sierra Parchment. Chit-Chat right in there, as we mentioned. Amaya Battle, Gracie Merkel, some other names that certainly deserve being shouted out. One last award we didn't mention, Sixth Player of the Year, two more actually. Sixth Player of the Year is Angela Dugalich of UCLA. I voted Amaya Hargrove, and upon looking back after I submitted my vote, Hargrove started more than half of the Big Ten games she played in. So I get that she was eligible because she only started 9 of 28 games on the year, but she started 9 of 17 Big Ten games she played in. So I'm good with this. I'm good with Angela Dugalich. She was terrific, has a WNBA future in front of her. And then Corey Close, Coach of the Year. This is one we can chat about if you want to, Dalton. I think Jan Jensen and Dawn Plitzowite were right there on her tail. But here's what I'll say. This is not me voting for number one being number one. This is me voting for absolute dominance from a team in the deepest we've seen the Big Ten maybe ever. And Corey Close's team just ran through it. And I do think there's a little bit of Coach of the Year has to do with your roster assimilation. Like, she put together an incredible basketball team and has coached them incredibly well. And so, like, to be like, oh, she hasn't done enough. Like, what else does she need to do? She didn't lose a game in the Big Ten. So that was my reasoning. I understand and respect the votes for Jan Jensen, for Dawn Plitzowite. I absolutely totally see that. Those two had terrific years. But for me, the dominance of UCLA was enough for Corey Close to win it.
Hey, I'm not somebody who will always just go hand in hand who won the league. Well, that's your Coach of the Year. I don't often do that, but I think you nailed it. I think when you're talking about the Big Ten having its best year ever, UCLA ran through it 18-0. 13 of those games they won by 20 or more points.
Yep.
Like, the expectation and standard was set in an impossible spot for them there in Westwood, and somehow not just meeting it. I mean, you and I talked about they even excelled what the impossible standard in front of them was laid out to be. They didn't drop a single game. All that being said, I mean, I voted for Corey Close, but next to it was Jan Jensen.
Yep.
And I think it was more of a 1A, 1B. They're just very different scenarios. If Corey Close and UCLA lose a game, or if they have half of their games are squeaking by, maybe this goes a little bit differently. The way they just ran roughshod through the entire league at its best it's ever been in history was just too impressive, and I thought overwhelming. But overall, I do want to give credit and flowers to Jan Jensen, because look, this is a team that you and I talked about, Austin. We were skeptical throughout the beginning of the season, especially with what this roster was. I did not think they would be able to climb this high. I thought they might be a fringe top 5 team, maybe at their best. And not only that, but they also had to go through some adversity with injuries. And look, a lot of teams have had to go through injuries, but they lose Taylor McCabe. And I think there were some questions about, okay, what's next for Iowa? Can you really put this much stock into Ava Hayden? Can Stolke and Hayden play together? If Stolke's not able to shoot from the mid-range, are they able to play together? Is Chit-Chat right bringing her in, going to immediately boost everything? And Jan Jensen just kept finding ways to tool around and end up as the second seed in this Big Ten tournament, in this Big Ten conference. I think a lot of credit should go to that, because I still don't know that this is one of the top 2 most talented teams in the league in Iowa. And to me, that means that was a hell of a job as a coach in Jan Jensen to get them to where they were. I think if it's any other year, Jan Jensen is my Coach of the Year. I just thought what UCLA did was so overwhelming. We haven't seen this really ever in Big Ten women's basketball history.
And if you look over the last year and a half, from about the halfway point of last season, what Iowa's been able to do. Remember, they were off to a 2-6 start in the Big Ten last year, and Jan Jensen turned them around and became a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. And now this year they're looking at a 2 seed. Like that's really incredible what they've done there in Iowa City. So those are the postseason awards, Dalton. Let's throw the bracket back up there and talk about these Wednesday games. We've got Indiana, Nebraska to kick off the tournament. It's not necessarily a NCAA tournament play-in game like it was last year between Minnesota and Washington. It is for Nebraska, though. We posted a video on Friday. I reached out to Charlie Cream last week just for some insight on the Nebraska situation because it is very unique in what they've kind of their resume. He said this: Nebraska needs another win or two. Rutgers doesn't help them. This was before the Rutgers game. Rutgers doesn't help them. Something of note in the tournament may be needed. Of course, what happens elsewhere, notably the Big 12, factors in heavily as well. Now, since he said that, Nebraska's moved up 2 spots, and they are now the third to last team in the field, ahead of Colorado and Mississippi State, for whatever that is worth in your minds. But I do think if they lose this game to Indiana, Dalton, they will finish the season with 1 quad 1 win. They will finish it having lost, I believe that would be 8 of their last 10. And you're looking at Nebraska as an 18-14 team. I don't think they get in. So I think they need this one on Wednesday.
No, I think that's fair. I think if they do get in, even honestly with just a win over Indiana, like if that's how this plays out, this would be unprecedented for a Big Ten team. That resume we have not seen before in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they could become the first of its kind, but overall, I think absolutely they have to be Indiana. They may even need to win one more to really feel okay when it comes to Selection Sunday. I think that'd be fair to say. I think there's been so many close calls for them. I think you can kind of feel for that. But at the same time, they do need to get the wins. When you say 1 quad 1 win, that's pretty damning.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, Indiana on the other side also has 1 quad 1 win. Like, it's kind of crazy. We sit here now with them playing each other. These two teams were 1 game apart in the Big Ten. They have the same amount of quad 1 wins. Now, Nebraska did a better job in the non-conference of taking care of their business. Indiana
Undefeated.
played around a little bit, played some close games with teams they shouldn't have been close with. But I actually think these two teams are fairly similar. You've got Shay, Ciezki, and Britt Prince kind of driving the ship. I think Amaya Hargrove is a difference maker because Indiana, still with Odessa playing better, doesn't have that height inside to match up with her and Petra Bojan. So something to keep an eye on there. Just looking back at the first matchup, it was 78-73 Nebraska. Shay went for 31 in that game, only hit 1 3, 1 of 5. The big one, though, Lene Beaumont didn't score in that game. So now Indiana got a double-double out of Xenia Soka-Guman, who is not active. So that's something that's going to have to be overcome. But you would imagine that Lene Beaumont is not going to go over in this game. You would assume she's going to come to play. She was 0 for 7 from the floor in that game. Wow. So would assume she's going to bring her A game to Indianapolis. For Nebraska, Britt Prince was just solid, just such a solid player. 20 points, 7 assists, 6 of 11 from the floor. Jessica Petrie was really good in this game. Again, I think a mismatch against Indiana because of her size at that 4 position going up against Maya Makaleski. So that'll be another matchup to watch there as those two battle it out. But Maya has grown leaps and bounds since those two teams played. That was back in early January. So a lot has changed. Nebraska, I would say the arrow is pointing down in terms of their trend, and then Indiana's arrow is pointing up. So I think that's a fascinating opening game to kick off the tournament. And then you get Illinois against Wisconsin. And Illinois is, I think, a better than their record team, but somebody had to be 10th best in this league. And remember last season, that was, if I'm not mistaken, Iowa? It was Iowa or Nebraska. Right. They were 10 and 11, and they were both tournament teams. And Iowa was a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament, who ended up having to play on the opening day of the Big Ten tournament. So I think Illinois, Wisconsin is going to be fascinating because I think Illinois is better than the seed line. But I think Wisconsin is better than they were last season. And I do think if they can mentally get themselves there, I know they've lost 9 straight. But this is a team that 2 months ago was beating Washington and Nebraska and Michigan State. Like, they have some of the best wins not Washington. Sorry, it was Nebraska and Oregon and Michigan State, and they took Washington to overtime. This is a team with some of the best wins in the league. And if they can get their heads back to, okay, new season, brand new, we're all 0-0, get the nine game losing streak out of their minds, I think this is a fascinating matchup.
No, I think so too. I think neither of these teams are really ones you want to play, which of course, hey, Michigan State, you get the winner of whichever one of those two teams win. But I think they do. They both are two teams that you know are going to show up and play really, really hard. And I think that's one of the things that really kind of scares you about them. But it's funny too, because you're talking about the seeds and, Iowa's case last year, only the Big Ten, right? Like if we keep it on Michigan State for a moment, they're a 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament, but still as of now projected to be a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like
Yep.
the SEC has some of that too, but that is ridiculous
OD.
territory to roam, where you're talking about being a 7 seed in your league and a hosting in the NCAA tournament, like some of our Big Ten schools might do.
So deep. These two teams played not that long ago. Illinois won by 32. That was in Champaign. Gift Uchenna had a nice game. Destiny Howell was 1 for 10 from the floor in that one. So similar to Lene Beaumont, I think Destiny Howell is going to be better than that. Illinois was so balanced. They had 6 in double figures. Maddie Weber's a player that just an unsung, doesn't get a lot of attention, but just produces off the bench for Illinois. She had a really good game in this one. Aaliyah Guyton has really come on. This was the game she went 6 for 6 from the 3-point line. I think it's going to be a tough task for Wisconsin, but I do think it's going to be, I think this day is going to have closer games than it did last season. And the final game is Purdue against Oregon. We just saw this game like a week ago, and Oregon ended up winning it. It was not a blowout. Oregon jumped out in the second quarter, or I think it was actually the first quarter. They jumped out to a sizable lead, and Purdue just kind of kept chipping away. But it was 71-65 Oregon, and they were leading by 10 going into the fourth. So it was still a very much a ball game in that fourth quarter. What stands out to you when you think about Oregon Purdue?
I think for the most part, you're talking about two teams that really seem to be maybe inconsistent at
Yeah.
times. I think overall, we're pretty high on what the prospects of Oregon can be if they consistently show up and bring it. I think Oregon has a talent advantage, is how I feel just point blank staring at it. But the question is, we've seen them kind of drag their feet at times heading into some of these games. If they show up to play, I like the Ducks. If not, I'll be really curious if the Purdue Boilermakers can't just make this really interesting and flip a big upset on the opening day.
I don't know what the status is of Madison Layden-Zay. She missed the final couple of games of the regular season for Purdue, including this one. And you lose a game by 6 without one of your senior leaders. That could have made a big difference. Purdue, I think the matchup in the post is really intriguing. Lana McCarthy at 18, and then Ahisa Tute, who is just playing phenomenal basketball right now.
I love watching a Tute play.
She's so fun. So fun. She had 17. So that was a fun matchup. We'll see who wins that post matchup. The Purdue guards, I think, Dalton, are the definition of the inconsistency that we see from Purdue. On one night, you can get great performances like in this game. Nia Smith went for 20. Tara Day went for 15. But then there can be other days where they just don't show up. So can they get some consistency out of their guards? Season's on the line for Purdue, for Wisconsin, for Indiana, even for Nebraska potentially. And that's one thing to watch for in those latter two games for sure. Illinois and Oregon are firmly in. Not that they want to lose, but is there a little bit more motivation for Wisconsin and Purdue to extend their seasons a little bit longer? That'll be something to watch for. Okay, before we go, let's flash the bracket back up here, Dalton. What else? What are some potential games down the road that you would circle and say, I got to be watching that one?
Well, I think if Maryland does survive there on that bottom line, that in Michigan as a rerun could be really interesting just because you give Brenda Fries a loss like she just suffered against that opponent a few days ago, let her rerun it and see what happens. I think that could be really interesting. I think USC Washington will be a great way to kick off Thursday. I think those are two
If you
really
like defense.
confident teams. Yeah, a lot of defense, but it also has some microwave facets, right? Like I think Savia Sellers is one of the most get hot scorers there is in this league. Kara Dunn's proven to be that for USC at times, if it's not
Yep.
Jazzy Davidson. I think overall, though, the biggest thing is UCLA. Like it just feels like they're going to be able to run through this. That's one of the big things to me is who can put up the biggest fight with UCLA? Would it be Iowa in a rematch in the title game where you give Hayden and match the size? Would it be Michigan, who only lost by 3, but they cut it to 3 with some huge threes in the final minute? Who can pose the biggest threat to the Bruins is a big question heading in.
I think Iowa will have a home court advantage if that sets up there on Sunday afternoon. The
Sure.
Hawkeye fans always travel to these things. So, and again, we said it before they played in LA. The size of Iowa can match up a little bit with the size of UCLA.
Yep.
And so I'm curious at another crack at it for Iowa. And then for Michigan, did they learn something down the stretch of that UCLA game that they can use in a potential rematch? I think Ohio State, Minnesota is a fascinating potential matchup that could happen there on day 3. And then I think it's just like you said at the top of the show, the implications. You've got UCLA who's pretty much firmly a 1. There's not really any discussion there, but Michigan and Iowa are playing for the 2 line. Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan State, Maryland, all playing for the 4 line right now, trying to be hosts. In women's basketball, it's such a big difference between the 4 and the 5. You're either sleeping in your own bed or you're packing a bag and you're flying out 3 days in advance.
Right.
And having to be on the road. So that's a massive storyline. And then on the other side, Nebraska playing for the bubble. Can they get a win to make sure they're in for March Madness? I think if they win the first one, they're on the bubble. If they win the second one, they don't have to sweat out Selection Sunday.
Hey, real quick before we go, the other thing I think of too, especially given the Michigan State camp, if they get by the winner of Wisconsin, Illinois on Thursday, I think it's a really interesting rematch on Friday.
Yep.
I felt Michigan State was really shorthanded at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Grace Van Sluten had 3 fouls in literally the first 6 minutes she was on the floor. That's not an exaggeration. And that was the only size Michigan State had in that game. Now the Spartans also have Isa Alexander back, who's the most physical post player in the Robin Fralick era. Be curious how that looks different if we get to see it a second time around. I mean, Iowa's still a really good team, but I think just the opportunity to see it play out would be really intriguing.
And look, I'm not picking against your Spartans, but even if it's Illinois, Iowa, and we get another crack at what we just saw at Carver Hawkeye Arena last week, boy, I think Friday has the ability. I think UCLA will dominate that first game. But I think Friday, the final 3 games have the chance to be an absolute classic of a day that you're going to absolutely want to watch. And one more thing I'll throw out there for my Hoosier fans. If Indiana gets on a run here, just throwing this out there, let's say Indiana beats Nebraska, beats Ohio State, and they're sitting there on Friday taking on Minnesota with a 19-13 record. They'd be up to 3 quad 1 wins at that point. Their net would certainly be in the top 50 at that point. Could they be playing for an NCAA tournament spot on Friday against Minnesota? Would be their 20th win of the season, would be 3 quad 1 wins in a row. Just a hypothetical for the Hoosier fans out there who have had their issues with this team at times in January. Look at where they're at right now. They were not that far off. If Indiana flips like 2 of those games in January, they're in a better position than Nebraska is right now. So just curious if Indiana can get hot, and obviously they have a microwave type player in first team all Big Ten caliber Shay Ciezki. Can they get I'm going to annoy Dalton so much with
What
how much
a full circle to punch that home. Good
if
work.
they can make a run. Look, Ohio State's a really good basketball team. Indiana led them by 15 at their place. Now, they obviously let it slip away, but they were in that game. They led by double figures for a decent amount of that first half. Minnesota came into Bloomington and smoked Indiana, but that was months ago, back in late December. So, look, it's a very uphill climb, but I'm just saying there's not a 0% possibility. I would love to ask Charlie Cream that hypothetical question, but your winner, Dalton, is it UCLA?
UCLA.
Yeah. I think you're silly to prove otherwise. If that happens, Dalton, who's the player of the tournament?
Lauren Betts. Might as well keep it going with the same train of thought, right?
I think if they win, it's because no one can match up with her, and she will produce the numbers that lead to that result. If someone other than UCLA wins, who is it, and who's the tournament MVP?
Gosh, if it's, I'd take the other side of the bracket then. Let's go Iowa and Ava Hayden.
Okay. I'm going to go Michigan and Silas Swords. Because Sila just has that knack for making big moments. She may score 8 points in the first game of the tournament, but when it counts in a tight game late, let's say with Iowa or UCLA, she might show up and just knock down some big time threes. So I'm still picking UCLA, but the Michigan-Iowa game could be absolute theater, though, on Saturday if that game happens. Boy, there's so many great matchups, Dalton. I think this tournament is going to just be absolute must-watch from Wednesday at 3:30 all the way through Sunday afternoon. Obviously, you should listen to all the great and wonderful radio people that will be there on Radio Row. If you are a person who's a TV person, it's Peacock on day 1. It is BTN on days 2, 3, and 4, and then it is CBS at 2:15 on Sunday afternoon to wrap up the tournament. So just something to keep an eye on. This has been a fun one, Dalton. We actually are done with the regular season. Can you believe it? There's going to be at least, there's already 3 teams that seasons are done. We're going to see a couple more seasons come to an end before we talk next. We should mention, it's something, if you were listening to us today and wondering if we were going to talk about it, Coquise Washington is out at Rutgers. We will dive in the offseason into kind of where Rutgers goes from here, where Northwestern goes from here with Joe McEwen out. Dalton and I are not people who are going to sit here and give you coaching hot boards. We're going to wait for those schools to make a hire, and then we're going to talk about it. So we'll dive into that, I promise, in April when we get slowed down. But right now, it's full speed ahead with 12 teams in the NCAA tournament, 7 hosting, and 15 converging on Indianapolis tomorrow. I'm leaving. I'm going to Indy right now. Dalton, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. I will see you in Indianapolis here in just a day or so.
Sounds like a plan, partner.
It's going to be great. Thank you all. If you're in Indianapolis, by the way, come say hi if you can. Dribble Drive episode 92 in the books. Dalton and Austin saying so long. We'll see you guys at the Big Ten tournament.